What's up? It's Matt Plapp. We are back with another restaurant expert roundup. We got a deep dive session today. We're with Bruce Nelson. We will be back in 1 second. Bruce, my man, how's the weather up in Minnesota?
Minneapolis, weather's great. It's 89 degrees today, but I'm heading north to the lake country right after work.
Are you getting invaded with cicadas up there?
No, we don't have any.
We got them everywhere. I actually thought my car speaker was blown the other day, and it was a cicada stuck by the speaker by the window.
I did read one restaurant that was doing chocolate-covered cicadas.
Ooh.
So turning lemons into lemonade.
There you go. So tell us who you are. I've got the book here, Myth, Magic, Math. Tell us about yourself and your what you do now in the book.
Sounds great. My name is Bruce Nelson. I am the CFO of a company called Nova Restaurant Group. We have 8 stores now. We actually remodeled one and opened one during COVID.
Nice.
So we've added a couple since I've talked to you last. Been in the restaurant industry for over 40 years. A little less than a year ago, I put out the book, Restaurant Management, The Myth, the Magic, and the Math. And it was a book I wrote to help restaurant owners, specifically independent restaurant owners, understand the financial pitfalls that they can run into when they follow their dream to open up a restaurant.
Yeah.
Most people don't open up a restaurant saying, boy, I really want to learn QuickBooks, or I really want to learn how to do the financial part of it. They like customers, they like food, they want to do service. Yeah. And the bottom line is if you don't learn what I teach, you won't be around.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because what we learn in the restaurant business as a restaurateur, what I've heard you learn is no different than what other business owners experience. Like me, with my business, I'm in the marketing world. I know a lot of marketing. Well, guess what? The Mercedes van that we bought that had an air conditioning issue that the guy couldn't come out and fix, we ended up taking the ceiling out. We found the disconnected tube. So now I'm an auto repair expert. So you've got all these things you learn that you didn't go into the business to learn, but they just happen.
Absolutely. And personnel is another one. Just learning how to manage people.
Yep. So one of the topics I wanted to talk about today and get you, I've had you on before. We've talked a few times. We're coming out of the pandemic. There's a lot of things that have changed. Obviously, different states have different employment issues, but when I look at your background and I read the book, I love the fact of the math in here that it's a numbers game. We've talked about food costs. We've talked about things of that nature and operating a restaurant, but I'm curious if you saw something the past year that maybe, like one thing that pops in my mind was to-go items. There are a lot of restaurants I know that did 90% dine-in, went to 90% to-go, and they realized real quick what styrofoam costs in mass. But I'm curious if there's any math part of the world, any financial part that you saw that helped restaurateurs during the pandemic, they can carry over and really prosper after we get out of all this and back to normal?
Well, the first challenge most of us had is when we built our restaurants, we built, 6, 7, 8,000 square foot facilities to house people in our building. So when we shut down, all of a sudden we had these huge overhead behemoths that could only do limited takeout. So it did put the restaurant industry into a position saying, okay, how do we do this? How do we try to keep some revenue coming in? How do we keep key people employed? And the bottom line was there, for most restaurants, there never was going to be a economic viable situation in which those restaurants were going to make a lot of money. The goal with most of us was during the pandemic shutdown, how do we survive? How do we keep paying the bills? How do we keep key people around and keep our buildings operating? Now, that being said, what we did learn during that time is automation. Most of us went to some form of online ordering systems.
Yep.
Early on in the pandemic game, we were just picking up the phone. I was hiring people just to answer phones. I had 4, 5, 6 people in every store just answering phones. So then we went to online and we automated that and made it much easier. That being said, now coming back out of the pandemic, we had another problem. We taught our customers that you can do to-go food with us. Now I got a full restaurant and I still got the same level of to-go food.
Yep.
I also did not build a restaurant to feed 300 people in-house and then send another 100 orders out every hour. So we've had to look at that to-go portion of it now that we're back out of it and say, okay, we can't let this thing destroy what we do, which is, serve people great food and alcohol inside.
Yeah, that's a quandary, I guess you could say, because there was people that were excited about the opportunity. Like, hey, oh my gosh, I can't wait till dine-in comes back. And now we have this online ordering we didn't have. We got third party and we've got dine-in. Well, then now I think they're saying, oh crap, how do we actually execute this? Especially since a lot of people aren't fully staffed yet.
Right. And what we did, and I allude to it in my book, the magic part of it. When we create these concepts, we have a vision in our mind. What do we want our restaurant to be? What do we want our guests to experience? COVID really threw a monkey wrench in that, because it said you have to space everybody out. You can't sit at a bar. You have to make reservations. They gave us a whole pile of rules. And some restaurants, let those rules dictate their magic. And the results are kind of disastrous. Who wants to show up to a restaurant and have the first 5 minutes a dissertation of what you can't do? So we really focused at Nova Restaurant Group to obviously adhere to those, but not let any of those things alter what our vision is for guest experience. So as we got back into full restaurant capacity, we didn't have to undo some COVID rules. We just already had instilled in our staff and customer expectations that this is what this experience will be. So back to the food, the food to go, we've had to actually curtail food to go because we weren't going to let that thing we built destroy the magic of what our restaurants were. So we do throttle it back. You can only order so many to-go items per every 15 minutes. And, if you want to order some to-go food, you may have to wait an hour to get that. So we don't jeopardize anybody who's got butts and seats.
So is there technology you're using that's allowing you to do that? Because that's the first time I've heard somebody say that they're limiting. Obviously, if they're calling in, you don't have to answer the phone. But if people are ordering online, is there something you're doing on your back end to slow down or make the wait times longer?
Yeah, the system we went with allows us to say how many orders per 15 minutes we will allow through. Okay. So we actually do, during full lockdown, man, open up the floodgates. We'll take it all. But now we do at key times. The key lunch and dinner times, we will throttle that back. Yeah,
and that's awesome. You're the first person I've heard talking about an online order and allowing that. I'm sure a lot of people have that. And that's an important fact, because I've actually been in restaurants before and other businesses where I've heard consumers make comments about, I'm sitting here right now, why can't I get a little attention? I actually went down to the courthouse the other day to pay the fee and the application for our fence we're putting around our back part of our new building. And I'm in there, I'm in front of the lady. I've given her a check for $484 just to apply to get authorized to put a freaking fence up, but it is what it is. And she answers the phone, and then I was gone. Like, I'm sitting there like, what do I do? Like, I'm standing here, you've got my credit card. And she just like, get out of here. It was blown away by it, because I'm like, I'm in front of you. And that's probably what can happen with that online experience if you don't throttle it back.
Oh, exactly. And, it's very frustrating. Right. I made the effort to drive here. I'm sitting here. I've got my money right here. I want this experience. So we as the Nova Group we didn't alter that. We kept as much as possible, our prior concepts in place. And I think because of it, we've been very successful. Our sales right now are exceeding 2019 in all of our stores.
Now, do you think that's because of pent-up demand?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Partially. And sadly, some of our competition is no longer there. So, there's fewer restaurants to meet that demand.
Okay.
But that's a short-term problem. Believe me, every restaurateur is scouring every strip mall in every town.
Yeah.
And looking for that, that next place they're going to open. So, what we see now will not be what we see when I talk to you a year from now.
Yeah. And I'm curious to get your feedback too on this. And full disclosure, I haven't seen your restaurant, so I don't know what the insides look like. But I'm in a restaurant yesterday down the street from our office. And for whatever reason, when the restrictions were completely lifted, they decided to put up dividers between the booths. They weren't there the entire last year, but they did it like last week. And it honestly looks like I did it. Like, I'm not a handyman. Like, that's not my forte. I know how to use a hammer and a drill. Occasionally, my wife backs away from the house when I have it out. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, this is a nice little restaurant. The food's always excellent. The service is excellent. It literally looks like you went last second to Home Depot, bought some cheap wood, used the wrong screws, and you've got this, what I would call Kentucky engineering up. Thank goodness I'm in Kentucky. But you've got all they're missing is duct tape on it. Have you guys seen anything you had to do in your restaurants or things that you like consciously thought, does this fit what we want to look like down the road?
There, in Minnesota, in order to be able to seat people closer, they were allowing like this partition between booths. We did add those in our stores when we were under a limited restriction. We tried to do them as tasteful as possible. I hated them because when we design our restaurants, we design them for a specific look, and that was not in the original plan. Our restaurants are very open, a lot of windows, so when you walk in, you can see everything, and it's nice when you feel like you're part of a big store and not being put into a little corner. Yeah. So the minute the restrictions were lifted, which for us was Memorial Day weekend, they were gone.
Love it. Yeah, that's definitely a tough thing when you've got a design you're going for. One of my clients has a brand called BlackRock, and he's got a few stores in Florida. And his actually, I would have not known his weren't there permanently because he's got this private dining experience. It's a higher end restaurant, not crazy high end, but kind of middle of the road. But it actually fit because he also engraved the glass with their logo, and it looks like it was built that way. But I've just seen a lot of restaurants that I think did a lot of temporary things and haven't undone them, or just, I don't know how they don't see it as a negative reflection on what their restaurant stands for.
Exactly. Now, our newest Hazelwood, we just opened a month and a half. We did do some permanent partitions in between booths and sections, and those we did have stained glass put in, really artful, tasteful, fit the model, but it did raise that booth level, so at least you're not staring at somebody right at the table next to you. So even we have adapted into our designs now, but the other ones that were designed before that, we just took them down. That was not a part of the plan, and it won't be moving forward.
Okay, so I got apart from the book I want to ask you about, because I think this ties in. I look at this as tying back in the reopening is step 6 on page, what are we on, page 91. It talks about once you've established that pre-opening project costs and you've got how the business is going to be funded and coming up with revenue projections, because I think that's a huge element of understanding what your expected annual, your seat value is going to be. A lot of that has changed because there's a lot of food costs are through the roof in certain aspects. You got those to-go items you're doing now, like to-go. When you were doing to-go a year and a half ago, you probably weren't. It wasn't such volume that you were contemplating every little thing. But I had a restaurant the other day I talked to that talked about, he said, hey, we made a mistake the last 6 months. We kind of operated under the thoughts of 2 years ago, and we had to look back and go, man, our prices are out of whack. Our food costs are a little different now. We're not using the same type of utensils. The same things aren't available. Any suggestions from a pricing standpoint as we come out of this and come into the new world of how people order food?
Well, for the to-go stuff, what we did is we looked at the cost of those to-go items, and they're expensive. And we said, okay, that plastic container with lid or those forks and knives are as much a part of that recipe as the French fries.
Yeah.
So we baked that into the cost. So now when I go and I price out my, hamburger and fries to go, I'm including into the cost of that. So we were able to capture that.
Okay.
We also started inventorying to-go supplies. We said this is a significant enough item. we're not going to just leave this up to people ordering it and putting it on shelves. We want to know on a monthly basis so we can tie in to go expenses to food sold so it doesn't get out of hand, because it can. Just like going to third-party deliveries, if you're not paying attention to how that fits into your model, you could wake up 6 months later and go, man, I was busy, but I didn't make any money.
Yeah, I think of this back when we were in the boat business. We sold fishing boats in Europe and the land of the lakes, Crestliner and the aluminum fishing boat world up there. But we sold about 700 fishing boats a year. And I'll never forget, about 3 years in, we realized we had to have this thing called a pack, that when we sold a boat, we had a pack that we knew went on it. We had a cover. And it was all these things that mechanics were like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's the bracket for the trolling motor. I'm like, it wasn't a big deal when we sold 30 boats. You're right, but we're selling 700. And 700 brackets adds up more than 30.
Right. It's a cost of packaging is a cost of most products. Yep. And now it's a cost of products in restaurants.
Yep.
When you get that annoying little package on almost everything you buy in a hardware store that you almost kill yourself, unwrapping, that's baked into the cost.
Yeah. And I think there's also a lot of items, and get your feedback on this. I think a lot of people have items in their restaurants that they could probably mark up a little more, that is going to help with the bottom line, that people aren't going to go away. Like, I go to a place down the street from here called Barleycorns. They have dock style buffalo wings. I'm thinking about going tonight, actually, but the wings are amazing. There's nowhere else I can get them. And I don't know what they cost. I couldn't tell you what they actually cost, because that's what I go there for. And if they raised them $1 next week to kind of offset maybe some of the other costs they have going up, it really wouldn't affect me from coming there from a customer standpoint. I wouldn't even recognize it.
Yeah. Well, onto that notion, we are seeing a product inflation.
Yeah.
And that with labor right now are going to be the two greatest challenges for restaurants over the next 12 months. The commodities pricing is going up and down. Beef is to the roof right now.
Yeah.
And some other items are becoming very expensive. So restaurants do have to pay attention to those things, plus the labor. So we're busy, and in some ways we're running some metrics as a percent of sales better, but the ones that we're taking hits on now are food costs and labor costs. So back to what you mentioned in the book, as we see these prices deviate from what our plan is, the best thing to do is to go back and recalculate what our overhead is. And instead of just taking the notion that, hey, let's just raise everything $1, which a lot of restaurants would do if they don't understand their costs, the amount you need to charge may be far less than that if you understand how these variable costs are affecting your profitability. Maybe it's 50 cents on those wings versus $1.
Yeah.
And you won't know that unless you actually do the calculation.
Yeah. And that's, for me, the one thing I notice a lot. And again, I'm not in the restaurant world of running a restaurant. One of our goals in the next 3 years is to open our own restaurant called Just the Starters, so that we can, and it's called based off of appetizers and milkshakes only. But I want to understand and be able to practice what we preach. But the one thing I see as a consumer, and I watch this all the time, that just drives me crazy, is when employees don't understand the value of some of those items. Like, I had a lady the other day, I walked up and I said, hey, can I get one of these? I was like, can I get one of these sauces? We were at a place in Chicago, and she gave me 3 of them. They're in little containers. They're about this big. And I couldn't tell you what that sauce cost, but I'm going to guess that sauce, that little lid, that container was probably, 15 to 20 cents. And we only used one, and there was 2 left on the table they got to throw away. And, that adds up over 100 customers.
It does. So what's the name of the restaurant you're going to start?
Just the Starters. So
Just the Starters.
I've got this vision. I don't know if I have it on me. Let's see if I got it on the desk here. I'll ship you one of these. I don't know if I got one on me. Let's see. Yep, here it is. So we've got I don't know if you ever heard of the book Vivid Vision or not, but we've got Vivid Vision's a book by Cam Harold. Is that Cameron Harold? And it's writing where you want to be. So this is 3 years out. So it says on here that December 31st, 2023, this was written earlier this year, this is what our company will look like. And it's got everything. And on the last page, it's got my 50s themed diner I want to have called Just the Starters. And my concept behind it is I love appetizers. I love milkshakes. I think some places get way too crazy. I'm going to have 10 appetizers and 3 flavors of milkshake, chocolate, strawberry, and vanilla. And the concept for me is going to be, I want to have, our goal with America's Best Restaurants is to grow the largest restaurant media and marketing company in the United States. And I think one of the key important factors there is our key management and employees understanding the restaurant business. A lot of our employees now worked in them. A couple of them currently work in restaurants. But I want to have it to where we have a place that we can practice exactly what we preach. We can hear from guys like you. And I don't plan on running the restaurant. I plan on having one of my clients down here who runs restaurants operate that part, and us be really deeply involved and be the back of the house and help work it. And, hey, once a week, our people that are building email campaigns are waiting on tables and just kind of make it a little different. But from the appetizer standpoint, I think that there's a cool opportunity to have something really unique called Just the Starters. And nobody steal my idea, but that would be something also a little easier to pull off than it would if we had 500 different types of entrees.
Exactly. And I didn't write it in my book, but if I were to do a second edition, I would also encourage most people to do their first restaurant is start small.
Yep.
Everybody goes, including myself. I went in with such a grand plan. I want to do all these things that have been floating around in my head. I want to turn it into a restaurant and show everybody, how good I am. Start small with something you can nail, and then let it grow.
Yeah, and I saw an interview the other day with either he's the founder or he's the current CEO or something with Raising Cane's, and he talked about it. I don't know if you have Raising Cane's up there, but he talked about Raising Cane's. They do French fries, chicken tenders, and one type of sauce basically. And it was, hey, we want to do one thing really freaking good, and that's it. And I see a lot of restaurants that get out on these edges, man. I was at a restaurant the other day. They had burgers, they had steak, they had fish tacos, they had fajitas. And I'm like, there's no way you have a kitchen staff that can pull off an awesome fajita, an awesome steak, awesome fish tacos. It just doesn't exist. I think a lot of people, it's temptation to be everything to everybody versus one thing. I want to be an appetizer restaurant with 3 flavors of milkshakes. Come on, have one.
I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
I went to this restaurant 2 days ago, and they pulled this big poster over to the table. You had 4 choices.
Love it.
2 steaks, shrimp, and a chopped sirloin. And that was it. It was fun.
No, I love it. There was a restaurant I went to in Utah. I guess it's the oldest, if I remember when we were on our ski trip, it's the oldest bar saloon in all of Utah. And we went to it, and they had 2 choices. They had a bar, and then you had 2 different types of burgers, and there was no changes. And they had it real clear. You do not ask for anything different. You take burger 1 or burger 2. And this was like 10, 12 years ago. But I thought it was great because I'm like, yeah, I'm getting a burger. Makes it pretty easy.
Yeah, there was a place in Memphis called Rendezvous Ribs. Same thing. I think you got a choice of either ribs with or without sauce. They all came with beans and fries, and I think Budweiser, and that was it. And if you wanted to deviate, you could maybe get a Coke instead of a Budweiser.
That's awesome. Love it. Well, cool. Well, I appreciate your time. It's Friday. It's time to pack it up and pack it in, go to the weekend. I know you got a lot of things happening up there. Obviously, the easiest way for people to support you and know about you is the book. It's on Amazon, correct?
It is on Amazon, or you can go to my website, brucelnelson.com, and I will personally sign it.
brucelnelson.com. Buy the book, but also if you do buy it on Amazon, if you don't buy it directly, I buy it directly, you get a signed copy, obviously. But if you buy it somewhere else, make sure you leave a review online. That way everybody out there can realize how awesome it is and take care of it. And Bruce, I appreciate your time. I look forward to getting up north and seeing you here in the near future. And hopefully we can get one of the America's Best Restaurants vans up there and visit the restaurants.
I'd love to see you.
Cool. Have a great weekend.
Take care.
Yeah.